All right, now we're legit. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the remainder of our quarter together or semester together. And what I'd like to do is screen share some examples of the final project, talk a little bit about what's remaining on our calendar for the last month of digital imaging that we have together. And then I'd like to answer any questions that you guys have. But the first thing that I want to point out is I mentioned this when we were hanging out in our Teams meeting, but because no one's posted yet in the playlist on vinyl discussion forum for that project, what I would love for you guys to do as you're completing your work, your 3 playlist designs for your partner, is post to that discussion forum by Friday, and then let's try to leave everyone critiques over the weekend on Monday, and then on Tuesday, hopefully, we're ready to move forward and you've filled out your self-assessments for the playlist on vinyl project, and I can start grading those. If that sounds good to everyone. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm going to turn my screen around here so that I can pull up our Canvas course site. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen here?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, let's bounce over here. Uh, Great. So thank you guys so much for commenting and posting on each other's projects for the imaginary landscape. It looks like we finally kind of caught up on that one. And the playlist on vinyl discussion forum for our critique is open and ready for you guys to read through these instructions and make a post with your work, the link to the Google Drive folder where you've created your um, where you've created your where you've posted your images, and then obviously you want to submit those to Canvas as well. But I want to bounce over to our modules, and I've actually unlocked all of our remaining modules for the rest of the semester together. And first, we'll go over to our week 6 or our week 11, April 6th checklist. This is where your self-assessment is posted. So once you have gotten feedback from your peers on that and you're ready to fill out the self-assessment, this document is listed here under week 11. And I'd really like you guys to start thinking about your digital zine projects. Has anyone here submitted your project proposal for that? Okay, so I think most folks are, most of you guys are still wrapping up the playlist on vinyl, but I definitely want to put that on your radar. So if we go over to last week when the digital zine was assigned, I'm going to open up the project description, and of course we can read it here in Canvas as well. But what you guys are going to be making for your final project is a digital zine. So this can tell a story, it can be sequential, it can be abstract, it can be open-ended and ambiguous. And your final project is due on Tuesday, May 4th, so you have a little bit less than a month. But what I really want to emphasize is the creative process, the conceptual development of your ideas, and then really taking the skills that you've acquired in terms of digital collage and applying them to a longer form exploration. So that's what this digital zine is. And what's wonderful about zines is that they are like a direct product of DIY culture of the late 1980s, 1990s, like the punk rock movement. Let's make something ourselves. And the interesting thing about the zine is it would be the kind of thing where you would print like 15 copies of this little book printed on crappy printer paper or a collage together on your own and just hand them out to people that you think are cool or that you meet at like a show or at the park or at a rave or whatever, to say, hey. So obviously during the pandemic, we're not going to shows, right? We're not in big groups of people. We're not meeting people sporadically and having a long conversation with them unless it's through a digital format for the most part. But that's a little bit of the history of the zine, and I've included 2 videos on YouTube that are really, really helpful for you guys to watch and to think about the history of the zine and contemporary zine fests that happen in Chicago, that happen in Pittsburgh, happen in New York. But the biggest zine fest actually happens here in Chicago in the Fulton Market area every year in non-pandemic times, which is pretty cool. So the things you want to consider are, will your zine tell a story? Will it give instructions, do something else? Will it be personal? Will it be observational? What kind of imagery might you include? Will you use your own font? How will you fill out the layout? And how are you going to present it? Will you yourself appear in the zine? All of that is kind of up to you, and I think it'll make more sense as we start to look at some of the examples I've included. Don't make your zine about your pet. Please don't do that. It has been done, and it definitely does not generally work. And also avoid just like pasting photos onto the zine. Like I'd like you to be working specifically in digital collage with the skills you've learned from the last couple of projects. And what you'll do is turn in the project proposal for this. If you haven't already, you're going to propose your idea. I'm going to give you guys feedback. And then ultimately, you will turn in your digital zine as a series of JPEGs and a PDF into Canvas. And here are some really great examples, contemporary examples of websites where some folks are creating and selling their zines online. So here's a couple of different zine libraries if you want to take a look at some of these examples, contemporary examples by artists, illustrators, creators, digital collage artists. All of these links have some really great examples of DIY zines. And then I've included some student examples as well that you can click on and take a look at. Now, I'm going to go back over to modules, and then I'm going to show a bunch of different examples of the digital zines that are student projects, so you can have an idea of what that might look like. But the thing that I want to stress, here it is, next week, assuming you've gotten some ideas together and you're working on your content for your zine and you've arranged your Photoshop canvases at the appropriate size, thinking, half of 8.5 by 11. So if you turn that horizontally, you get 1/2 of each page, and all of those those sizing requirements are listed in the actual project guidelines for the digital zine, which was assigned on March 30th. So I've included for you guys a template so you guys can work with an actual format. So, and I've included instructions on how to do this. You'll want to set up your canvases or artboards as you're actually creating the design. You'll want to make those 5.5 by 8.5 inches to create a single page, and then you'll drag them in as JPEGs into this document. You'll make a copy of it, and then once you have all of your images in, you can go to File, and then download as PDF, and that's what you can turn in for our class for your final project. But hopefully this makes a little bit more sense as we actually look at some student examples. So this digital zine is called Do You Love Me Now? And this student pulled different song lyrics that she enjoyed. She pulled in different scans of materials, as you can kind of see in the background, and scanned things like cotton balls, a bunch of cotton balls, and then changed the color to pink. She created handwritten text, which she incorporated throughout the zine. And it says, for the love, for the laughter, I feel up to your arms. I would give you the world. And if you look closely, these are all scanned sort of velvet-esque textures she's overlaid. This picture, We Could Get a Home in Miami, she incorporated this, her handwritten text, but she scanned and digitally collaged this photograph of an older couple who was getting married. She actually found this picture crumpled up outside of her apartment in Chicago and decided to incorporate that as a part of her zine. Wait for me until the time is right. I tried to love you. I thought I could. What's the catch to this feeling? So you might be noticing, like, this is abstract. It's not like telling, okay, this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Her zine is a really good example of a non-linear narrative. You're the echoes of my everything. I know I could have loved you. She scanned her broken iPhone. That's what this is on this side, which is pretty funny. If I take another heartbreak, I might just die. Say you'll love me forever. We'll be together forever. This is her. She actually kissed a piece of paper with different lipstick colors and scanned that and incorporated it as one of her pages. You could scan, you can photograph, you can really problem solve through the different elements that you'll include. These are little heart stickers. This is spilled wax. So that's one example. And again, this is not a linear storytelling book. This is not, an illustrated storybook. This is a statement about how she feels about relationships, how she feels about her particular relationship, sort of similar to like listening to a pop song where there's different ideas and maybe different moments that come to the surface, but not all music tells a story either. Here's another example where this student wanted to talk about how she's not necessarily like noticed always, and she wants a bit more recognition for what she's doing and wants to be noticed and respected as a female and as someone who's bold and strong. So her zine incorporates these scanned and rephotographed like old movie posters, and then she's actually digitally cut out these little moments that say, people see right through me, notice me, have you seen me? This is a digital collage of 3 different pictures compiled together. Less than perfect. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. And this, so she took this photograph, cut it out, and then replaced the sky with this lime green, and then added this little scribble illustration in Photoshop. I'm missing from my own existence. We won't forget each other, right? I think this is a really interesting moment where she's actually drawn between these 2 people's eyes. I think, therefore, I am doomed. And she said a lot within the scope of these 8 pages, right? Like, it's sort of a dark and brooding digital zine where she's really exploring identity. She's exploring self. She's exploring historic images of how women have been presented in cinema, in Hollywood, and then she's actually done this very transgressive thing of crossing out their mouth or crossing out their eyes, which really just sort of changes how we understand those original images because she's recontextualized them inside of her zine. Are you guys with me so far? You want to look at some more?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is one by a student who created this piece during the pandemic. I'm going to actually refresh it because it looks like it's not previewing correctly. This student created this zine during the pandemic because she was really just quite nostalgic for her friends and for all of the times out, hanging out in the summertime, going to the lake together, being in Chicago, and she is a Pisces and identifies with that zodiac sign, and so she kind of centered her whole approach around like a Pisces response or reaction to losing that time and space with their friends during the pandemic, and using pictures, photographs, to re-access those memories of the time, the good time spent with her friends. And so she's photographed and scanned old pictures. She's photographed and scanned her own handwriting. She's incorporated some text typography added in Photoshop. And she's also scanned things like a little bracelet that says Pisces Moon and separated out the letters. So she has this really kind of striking cover page. A collection of contemplative writings from the past year of my life. Down the street with nowhere to go, mascara running from the train on my way home. These are her own photos that she took on disposable cameras. Footprints over white ground, heavens turned upside down, walked out in the snow just to get in my head. I'm going to become who I want to become. You know, there's sort of these really strong statements as a woman, and her expressing like how she's going to come out of this out of this pandemic, and how she's going to get back to normalcy. But if you look at this image in particular, I think this was a really strong idea because it combines two photographs. One, which is the outside of her standing on this top floor of a parking garage. And then on top of it is a window of her living room or of her bedroom. We have the posters on the wall. We have Stevie Nicks, you know, and you kind of have to do a double take to really see that these two things are connecting, that these two things are combined. Looking out on the water, drifting even further. There's no one to save me because I'm in a daydream. And she kind of ends it resolutely here with a number of different overlapping pictures, textures, and text. I'm not going to read through each and every one of these, but I want you guys to get an idea of the wide scope and gamut of different aesthetics you could play with and different stylistic approaches based on your past work in our class. And as you're developing your own portfolio of work based on your style, you know, this one, for example, is called Chasing Daylight, and this is just this super psychedelic, lots of layers, heavy collage, almost punk rock aesthetic. It looks like all of the letters have been individually cut out from magazines. And again, there's a little bit of original poetry in this zine. For a very, very different look or approach. This student was really interested in using the zine format to explore a toxic relationship with social media and his addiction to the screen, his addiction to being online, and sort of consuming a lot of content. So he wrote this very short poem and incorporated it with imagery looking out different types of windows, thinking about the phone screen as a window to other outside places. And so he's used digital collage. He's kept one page very simple, and then on the other made conscious choices like placing the search bar on top of a portrait of himself on top of his eyes, the little exclamation point up here. There's a lot of different layers going on in the background. Even though it looks really simple, he's utilized this sort of outline around the form. He's incorporated text in really interesting ways, like here where it says stuck. This text has a texture layer over it, and it sort of falls off on either side of the format. And here he's really just made this super goofy looking phone image where his mouth has been replaced, his eyes have been replaced, and he's in photo mode in an iPhone. And it looks really uncanny and a little bit creepy. And I think that was all quite intentional. Selfie in the mirror, images of people holding up their phones. So, as you can see, he's really saying something about his relationship with social media, and it comes across as being a really universal statement, I think, that a lot of people can relate to as well. Here's more of a space journey approach where the student incorporated imagery that he photographed of extraterrestrial landscapes and combined them with other banal things like I think that there's some pill bottles in here, nail clippers. This is multiple layers of different cities overlaid on top of each other. And this final image is really fascinating to me because it's like a sort of submerged circuit board inside of a little grotto here or a cave. And then the last one I'll show you guys is by a student who wanted to explore the relationship between her and her body. And this zine talks about body dysmorphia and a sort of approaching the idea of self-care not in the way that like the media or marketing companies or advertising want you to buy stuff in order to take care of yourself or to have experiences in order to really engage in self-care, but the act and the process of becoming self-aware and becoming aware of one's body. For example, she's included her handwritten text saying, "A good day in my body also means remembering to take my medication. I'm all about romanticizing self-care, but there is nothing pretty about forgetting to take your pills." So it all of a sudden becomes this really personal exploration and personal study of what self-care means to her and what taking care of her body really means outside of the larger like marketing, advertising goals. A good day in my body can look like eating 3 meals a day because I know that I need to, but wait, I have to get this thing done instead. It'll only take a second. A good day doesn't mean that I will always enjoy the sight of myself in a mirror, but it means that she and I are friends today. My day will not be spent on our mutually assured destruction. Instead, I will get along with her. Maybe we'll go grab some coffee. So she's really talking about and personifying her own body and her relationship with her body and referring to her body as her. And we have all of these moments in this zine that are a sort of duality, right? Like looking back at oneself. And it becomes a really reflexive study in that sense. So here are some examples. All of these were created with a template similar to the one that I'm providing you guys so that you can drop in your imagery. But as I stop the share here, I want you guys to know that just like with all past projects, I really want you to avoid pixelation. I want you to make sure you're incorporating high resolution photos and that you're thinking really consciously about what you want to say through this zine and what you want that conversation to open up. This is your final project, and so we've looked at a lot of different artists, we've looked at a lot of different conceptual album covers, we've looked at different conceptual imaginary landscapes, and now I want you to really apply the technical skills that you've been working on throughout the semester to a larger conversation through the Digital Zine project. So do you guys have any questions on that?
I was wondering how cohesive does it have to be? Like if I have like a couple ideas, like does it all have to be like one like I know we're doing one like theme or like one idea, but does it all have to like look the same kind of, I guess?
It needs to be visually cohesive. I think that's a really great question. The zine needs to be visually cohesive, so there's certain strategies that we want to see repeated, so it stylistically comes together in a way that reads as the same visual message. But I think
Okay.
that as far as what you talk about, I think if you were to talk about three different things in the zine, that might be a little bit ambitious. But if those three different things are really related to each other, I think that the visual would help to pull that together like, inherently. So yeah, I
Okay.
would. That's where I would kind of push you in the direction of.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Daniela, are you with us?
I am. I was just watching you present the projects.
Cool. You're processing a little bit, right? You're like, oh man, okay, that's what this is, right?
It's like scrapbooking, which I think is going to be like a fun project for the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can think of it as scrapbooking. You can think of it as a sort of immersive collage. You can think of it as a personal exploration in some way. You can think of it as an observation. You can use it as a sort of cathartic tool to talk about something that you personally are struggling with or thinking about in your life, like outside of art, outside of creative projects. You can absolutely you you can talk about friendship, family, self. Um, you can talk about the city where you live, where you're from. There's a lot of different approaches, but what I am hoping is as you guys are working on your project proposals, I'd really like you to have those submitted this week so that I can go through and give you feedback no later than Tuesday next week. And we can have individual meetings actually talking about your, just like what we did with the playlist on vinyl. I want to talk to you guys about your in progress work. And this is not a project where you can leave it to the last minute and rush through it and expect it to be good, as you've realized with all of our past projects in our class. But on top of that, this particular project requires another level of thinking in your exploration. So the conceptual part of this project is really, really important. Cool. Awesome. Um, I think that is the main stuff I wanted to talk about with you guys today, and I'm glad I could glad I could share my screen so you actually could see what I was talking about. But if we bounce over one more time to our checklist for today, I want to stress on March or April 6th, our checklist for today. We've been, we did not get to playlist on vinyl because you guys are still working on that project. And I want to really encourage you guys to wrap up that project, post it in our discussion forum, fill out your self assessment, and then move forward with the digital zine project. Otherwise, you're going to run out of time and not be able to create a really thoughtful final project. But let's try to wrap this critique up this week for the playlist on vinyl and go from there. Cool. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna let everyone go here. Maya, if you don't mind, if you can hang out after this meeting in the same, or actually no, let's start a new meeting because I'm gonna end the recording here.
Okay.
Stop recording.